Progression is an essential tool for fun. We'll define progression as increasing your skill level, with skill level being how likely you are to get a desired outcome. This was covered in my previous video on it. People love to improve, and progression is just that. In the last video I mentioned that reaching the skill ceiling makes a game boring. The fact that there is no more progression is one of the reasons for that. So to keep the game fun for as long as possible, we need progression to last as long as possible. Progression is learning, and the harder something is, the longer it takes to learn it. Making the required inputs more complex by adding more of them, requiring them to be done in a certain way or at a certain time, are just some of the ways to expand the difficulty. Should everything be as challenging as possible? No. Something very important to remember is the skill floor. When there's a very difficult task, sometimes it takes quite a while before your skill level actually increases. Challenging tasks have a lot of time of being able to progress, but that doesn't mean that the player always progresses in the moment. During the start, they may be at a low skill level for quite a while, get frustrated with no progression, and quit. To raise the skill floor, you can make the task easier. But isn't an easier task not fun for long? We need the skill floor of an easy task, but the long-term progression of a hard task. Let's simply combine them then. With the complexity of most hard tasks, they can be broken up into smaller, easier tasks. Imagine a game where the hard task is fighting dozens of enemies at the same time. The game would have a system that pits you against one enemy at first, and gradually introduces more until you reach the hard task at the end. By making the beginning easier, we raise the skill floor, but by having the end goal be more complex, the game's progression will last longer. Most multiplayer games have a form of this breaking up the complex task. Matchmaking. By pitting incompetent players against each other, it creates an environment they can learn the smaller tasks in without losing every time. There is actually another way to avoid low skill levels on difficult tasks. If a player fails, for example level 1 every time he tries to win, he might give up. But if his failures are on level 14, he won't think his chances of success are 0%. This is because players conflate their victories in other tasks with the current task. This requires easier tasks beforehand, so it's very similar to breaking up the task. Which brings us to this. The real point of any game is the feelings you receive from it. Meaning two things. Convincing the player that progressing is as good as the real thing if done properly. And if there is real progression, make the player aware of it. If it's not noticed, it's worthless. You need to make sure your game is good at communication, which will be covered in the next video.